Hello everyone, and welcome to Monday Musing 28, where we muse over a rather important question of: has Warhammer got enough factions? Does it have room for any more factions? And is such a thing as too much choice a bad thing? I don't know. That's where I'm at the moment. Yeah, well, that's what I'm musing over, and we'll talk about. It's a really, you can go from a very simplistic answer to, of course, there's room. It's an infinite universe, and there's always hunger for more. But I want to have a look at it from a few different perspectives. Look at it from the hobbyist perspective, look at it from the gamer perspective, the tournament scene, and from a rules perspective as well. So that's where I'm at. I'm hoping you people can hear me and that everything is good. We've got quite a few people in the chat today, which is fantastic. Thank you very much for joining me. I know that Mondays can be a chore for some, most, all, but we're here, so we might as well do a show. So Coleman's in there, and he's been around for a while. Orc Boys is saying hello. Have I missed you? Yes, I have indeed, Orc Boys. I'm glad your laptop is up and running again. Dunny Woods has joined us. I'm trying to think. The Alex Bobsy saying hello to everyone. Sorry about that, I missed you earlier. Hamish is in there as well, and Surreal is in there. Jim Wilson. Oh, Surreal asking whether we're starting or ending the show. This is indeed the start of the show, so you're at the right end of the show, unless of course you were hoping to miss it, in which case apologies. Jim Wilson saying hello. Ralph is in there saying good evening. Hey Ralph, we were chatting earlier. Good as ever to catch up. Musing over the best ways to thin paint for airbrushing was the discussion there. Maybe that should be a whole evening based on that one time. Who knows? Daryl is in there. Phew, made it on time. Elster Nation saying good evening. Elster Nation. I was thinking of you only this evening as I was preparing my midtones for the skin on my little hairy cherubs, as I've nicknamed them, my fire slayers. Who else we got in there? Liam is in there saying fish people. Patrick saying hello to Surreal. We can hear you, no need to shout. Oh, shall I turn it down a bit? Is that too loud? Is it too loud? Is it too quiet? Blade of Templar saying good evening. Steve's a small will saying good evening as well. Excellent stuff, good to see you both. Jim Wilson, hey there, at Mr. Coleman, how's tricks? Coleman, I'll leave that for you to answer. And Dunny Woods, how are the Fire Slayers coming along, Phil? Well, that's a question in its own right, isn't it? I'll see if I can answer that for you, actually. I've not had a chance to post it to the Facebook group, but I'm wondering if I can get an image up from one of my recent messages. So, how are they going? Crikey. Well, yeah, the challenge is, of course, is just the sheer volume of them. But the good news is painting has at least commenced. If I can bring this up, how does that look? There you go. So that's everything built pretty much to my satisfaction. What stage are we at there? That is the black coat, the zenithal highlight with the grey, the base Bugman's Glow flesh applied, and the mid-tone, which I think, if I remember rightly, is Cadian flesh tones. So of course Elster Nation's ears will be pickling at this one, because he'll recognise that paint combination, no doubt at all. So that's mid-tones and shading done on the flesh. You can't really see the shading in that photo. One, the lights bleached it out. Two, obviously all the shading is underneath anyway. So on top of that will be a final spot highlight on some of the higher points of the muscles, and then a wash is going to go over the whole thing, and then I will start to glaze in a few muscle fibers and highlights as well with something. So when I say glaze in, I will glaze the highlight in, so I will blend it in, I suppose, is where I'm at with that. So that's how those things are going. Oh, actually, while I'm here then, we've also got, I think this is the base for my what's it called? Magmadroth. So this is for the Runefather on Magmadroth, and I did a little bit on 3D printing bases before, so this is indeed my 3D printed base. It's had a little bit of tidy up. These recesses here are still to have some kind of, I think I'm going to go for a lava effect, and then, you know what, I'm actually going to try water effects on top of the lava, so it gives it some depth and a little bit of translucency, which may or may not work, but I want to try it anyway. And of course, worst comes to the worst, if it all goes terribly wrong with this base, then I can print another one out. That's the good news on that one. How does the Magmadroth fit? Well, it's a kind of semi-custom pose. As you can see, the Magmadroth is kind of perched, if you like, on that, looking over that edge, if you like. So there you are. That's not a bad shot, is it? So you get the idea of how the Magmadroth is looking, and on that side there. So that's what I'm going for on that. There's my little lovely Magmadroth of joy. Right, so that's it. That's you all caught up on how the Flyer Slayers are going. Desperately slow, but at least I am now painting, which is not a bad scene. If I can get the highlights on the flesh done, and then I can start spot picking out all the colours for the cloth, I think is my next one. Then metallics, then beard and hair, if you like, or the mohawks on the helmets, and then I think more or less, potentially, an all-over wash on the flesh tone and the metallics. I don't know yet. I'm trying to see if I can create like a tone in between for those things. So that's what I'm talking about there. Whether that will work or not, I don't know. I've got plenty of dudes to kind of what am I trying to say? Plenty of dudes to make mistakes on, I suppose. Of the 70, 80, 90, of the 90 odd dudes that I've in the Fire Slayers army, I only need 55 of them, I think. For the 55 of them for the, oh, I'm just watching my stream go up and down. I hope you're still there. 55 of them for the tournament, so I can make a few mistakes and start again. Right, what are we like? So much Fire Slayers, says Coleman. Hola. Says Big Mac Dance Gold coming in. Whoa. Let's catch up with the chat, actually. Some of that's jumped down. So Sean Blake saying hey. DJ the Lucky One saying hi all. Fell Haters joined us. Elster Nation. I'm glad you reminded me of the small hairy cherubs. Lol. Coleman, so much flesh. Hashtag Fire Slayers. Surreal. I never wanted to play AOS, and then my sponsor got me in a gash, and after watching some back reps with him in them, I now want to play AOS while I wait for a codex. It's a good game. It's really enjoyable. The Alex Bobsy saying, are those airbrushed? Yes, they are indeed. They are airbrushed to that stage so far. So there's going to be a hell of a lot of hand painting on them at the moment. But seeing as though the models themselves are predominantly, oh, well, there you go. I can actually show some of that flesh tone there. It's not showing amazingly on the camera. Can I do that at least? Is that going to behave? Oh, no, I fixed the focus point so it doesn't jump around. So that's never going to work, is it? But yes, they are indeed airbrushed. Oh, where are we at now? Dunny Woods, very nice base. Thank you very much. Neil Molan saying, good evening all. Good evening, Neil. Surreal. Why not use resin with ink in it for lava? That's a temptation. I was thinking of maybe kind of airbrushing the glow effect and then putting red inks in the resin or something like that, so there's streaks of colour. It feels like I need to do some experimentation there. Sean actually suggesting water effect as well, paint inside the water effect as well. Daryl, that pose is super dynamic. Love the base. Thank you very much. Well, that was the main thing. I really needed to try and make the Magmadroth somewhat more dominating on the battlefield, and that was the idea, because those of you who are familiar with the Magmadroth, they kind of stand like that and they're like, ha, look at me. Whereas I really wanted to have this thing rearing up and kind of saying, this battlefield is mine and you're in a whole world of trouble. And he's got a little forked tongue to match his forked tail as well, which is the design I went with in the end. Whether I stick with that as my final Magmadroth, I don't know, but it's certainly the one I'm pushing for the tournament. Although, I have to say, what was I going to say? I have to say, I've not checked yet with the GW powers that be, whether they're going to allow that as a conversion. We will see. Can't imagine them getting too upset about it. Scott says, hello Mr. Phil, your Age of Sigmar stuff looks great. Well, thank you very much. Blade of Templar, do you play WoW? Seen you mentioned what game? World of Warcraft, I assume. Coleman, I think he does, yes. Dunny Woods, I need an airbrush, don't we all? Ralph says, I am the only one who gets some clicking in the sound. I'm hoping it's only you, Ralph, and no insult intended. Surreal, I like your style. Oh, anyway, bunch of chat. Frost and Fist is joining us. Hey, yup, beautiful people. And looking cool, Phil says, DJ the Lucky One. Yep, it's clicking a bit. Okay, I'm not quite sure why. Not quite sure why at all. Unless you were referring to when the washing machine was clicking and I had to secretly send a text message to my wife and go, oh my god, I forgot to turn the washing machine off. So I'm hoping that's the clicking you've heard. But Sam was here, wasn't he? And let's try that. I'm just going to remove the noise gate and hopefully that will do that. Let me know if that's fixed things. Sam was here. He tweaked my OBS settings a little bit, which just freaks me out a little bit. But you know, there you go. What can you do? What can you do? I can hear some like popping sometimes. Not too bad. Well, let's hope that's fixed it. Let's hope that's fixed it. Sounds like a crackling fireplace. That's really confusing now. Okay. Yes. Well, we'll leave that. We'll leave that for a bit, and we'll see if that has indeed solved it or not, and we'll go from there. So on to the subject of the musing. Really, I'm really looking for a lot of feedback from people on the show. That would be lovely if we could have that, please. So what I'm hoping for as I do that and tweak that bit over there is that some people will give me what their thought is. No, still static crackling. Static crackle, not too bad even on headphones. Well, there you go. Thank you, Steve Smallworld. I'm not quite sure what I can do about that. So let's push on. Let's push on and hope it's not too bad. Yeah, I don't know what it is. But there you go. I'm trying to listen to see if there is an actual one, but it must be a connection issue. So apologies. I shall rebuild and rectify for the next show. Right, musing. For those of you who are just used to this nonsense going on. It's static from the beard, says Void72. Thank you very much for the faith in the beard. I have turned my little heater off because I wondered if that was doing it as well. That it's so cold. It's so cold. So I've turned the heating off for a bit, but I can't promise that's going to stay off, certainly. Yes, right. What can we talk about? Well, the subject of the show, I suppose. So this is what prompted, blame Sam, this is what prompted today's musing. I was wondering from a gaming perspective. So I wasn't looking at it from the hobbyist perspective, because I do think from a hobbyist perspective it's quite nice to have lots and lots of lovely models, lots and lots of things we can paint and have fun with. But it was from a gaming perspective. And it was a theoretical muse going off in my head, which was, you know, each game system, be it 40k or Sigmar, has a finite amount of elements. So if we take a finite amount of profiles, move, weapon skill, ballistic skill, to hit, to wound, etc., and then you combine that with a finite amount of manipulating those things. So +1 to hit, -1 to hit, +2 to hit, re-roll 6s, re-roll 1s. Those kind of things. You potentially get to the point where there is only so much you can grant a unit in a faction without some repetition between factions. And to a degree, this came up in a previous game we were playing where I think I was playing against Nurgle. We were discussing Fire Slayer, and I was talking about the 5-up, ignore wounds, mortal wounds, and somebody said, and it was probably Jack, oh, so it's basically Plague Bearers. And I was kind of like, yeah, it kind of is. And at the start of Age of Sigmar, there was only... Woo! Thank you very much for following OGN4321. That surprised the hell out of me, to be honest. My volume is much higher than I was expecting. So let's pop that down a bit. Woo! So yeah, I was thinking if there is only a finite amount of elements you have within a rule system, if there's only a finite amount of manipulation of those rules, granting bonuses to hit, bonuses to save, bonuses to wound, bonuses to move, how many factions can you introduce into a game before there's a great deal of repetition between factions? In other words, the only real distinguishing fact between one faction and another is the models themselves. And that was the question. Is that enough? Is it enough to essentially field an army that for all intents and purposes is bordering on proxy from one faction to another? You know, essentially this army plays pretty much exactly like that army. There's a few special rules to tweak a difference, but it's minimal, and some of those special rules only affect the game in very rare circumstances. So we'll take the Magmadroth's ability to bleed and dish out mortal wounds, for instance, when it's wounded. It's not a major influencer in the game, that, and it's very circumstantial. I mean, any Fireslayer player worth his salt will probably keep the Magmadroth out of combat, partly because the power in the Magmadroth is actually affording a degree of protection to either the Runefather, the Rune Son, or the Rune Smiter on the back of the Magmadroth. And therefore, if it's a pool of wounds and a pool of protection, you actually don't want to commit that model to combat. So the thing that makes the Magmadroth special, if you like, potentially doesn't really ever feature in a game. So then we're down to, well, what does feature in a game? Well, I can re-roll saves. Well, that's the same as you know, Nurgle to a degree, although I can make it 4 and sometimes it's 6 depending on my unit size. And I think that was my point, is at what point do you start to say, and do you ever catch yourself saying this? You know, what can that unit do? That unit can do this. Ah, okay, it's just like X rather than Y. And I think that's the thing for me. The more factions you introduce, the more you chip away at those finite amount of manipulations you can do in gameplay, I suppose is what I'm saying. So that's what prompted the question. I have to say, I think if you answer the question personally from a hobbyist point of view, then it's an entirely different perspective. So I'm hoping there's some stuff in the chat. Let's have a quick look at chat, and then we'll talk about those differences. So sounds like a bad cable connection, but not to worry. I tell you what, then, in which case, oh, you know what, there was a cable hanging out of there, so I hope that has fixed it, but it probably hasn't. But we can try, can't we? Talking about the subject, I think there are still some factions too fragmented. Still can't. This is from Coleman. Still can't see the point of having dwarves and dispossessed separate, or wanderers and wood elves. Yeah. I mean, how much of that is you know, a lag, if you like, between the release of Age of Sigmar and the release of Battle Tomes for everything? And this is the interesting thing. I know on Sam, as one of Sam's previous chats is, you know, are the new rules becoming too much to keep up with? Well, they don't forget they promised us this as well. They promised us that within the space of about a 2-year period, pretty much every faction will receive its battle tome. So we can't simultaneously be, to a degree, surprised by that release schedule. But you're right, they could have made life a lot easier on themselves by combining some of those factions back together again. And we're into the grand allegiances then, aren't we? Ah, right. Daryl says it's more to do with the models. The Wood Elves and the Dwarves are simply factions for the old models, not carried across to the new setting. They just have rules so you can still use them. It's a solid point. Dispossessed might be a Freudian slip. There's a bit of a spelling issue there. Right, Daryl says, so there's a bunch of chat there. I can see them being phased out in the 2018 General's Handbook. I think that's a more way to placate the rage from the end of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. I don't worry, you can still use collection. There was definitely a degree of that. I have to say, though, we haven't as yet seen the repeat, if you like, of what happened with the rather poor, what were they called, the Egyptian dudes, and apologies to all of the players out there of that faction. You have to remember, I wasn't a huge 8th edition fantasy player. Back when I played fantasy, we had 1, 2 and 3, we had dwarves, orcs and humans, and that was about it as far as I can remember. Daryl, if they do watch this space and see a grown man cry, well, there you go. Right, what have we got? The Alex Bobsy says, I saw the preview. Is that for the Daughter of Cain model that transforms? Will be interesting to see more models with transformations, because that's a werewolf army that can be introduced to Sigmar. It's a good point. The idea of replacing your tokens on table by transformation, I suppose, in many respects is interesting, isn't it? It certainly introduces a new dynamic. I like the fact that it goes one way or the other. Thank you very much, Ralph, for Tomb Kings. I like the fact that you can make that transformation, and then that's the end of that transformation, if you like, and then you have to play the game as it is. So I wouldn't want it swapping backwards and forwards, you know, constantly swapping models out. And again, nor would I want to see it happen too often, to a degree, I suppose, because, you know, we start to see this repetition of rule. I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? Once you've got one special ability, something really unique, do we really want to see that shared around the other factions, or do we want to see that as being the core of what their different play style is? Frost and Fist says, of course it's hard parties, no matter how big it gets, it's important to continuously support them all. Well, there's a good point. As they introduce all of these factions, that means cyclically, as they release updates to battle tomes and codexes, we all incrementally get longer to wait before we get our factions updated, unless you're on the mainstream faction. So Genestealer Cult, we've got 3 Xenos releases happening in the next 3 months. Pretty exciting. We've seen the announcement of Tau. That's good news. It's good to see that Tau are on the way. But, you know, and we also know that Necrons are soon to follow, and I think if I remember rightly, Dark Eldar, Drakari as they're now known, is coming next. So that's 3 of the Xenos factions. I dare say that means I'm looking at least another quarter of at least a quarter of the year dedicated then back towards Space Marines. There's no other way of putting it. Certainly Imperium faction, should we say. So I'm probably looking towards the end of next year, aren't I, before I see my beloved Genestealer Cult receive the much deserved and wonderfully overpowered codex that I'm hoping for and desire. I'd like to see them make it much easier for me to include Astromilitarium vehicles, etc., etc. Not necessarily on the tank size, but transports and stuff like that, or you know, unique units and those kind of things, just to really, you know, expand the army a little bit. But I'll be waiting a while for that. And why am I waiting for a while? It's because they've got so many factions that they need to release codexes for, just on 40k alone. For all of those people who are waiting for their Dispossessed battle tomes, assuming it's coming, you are at the back of the queue, aren't you? Before your army gets some love, let's face it. So there's another impact of having so many factions that they need to support. Realistically, you will see a major release a month. That release will swing between Age of Sigmar and 40k. 6 releases per gaming system. 6 major releases per gaming system per year. Do you think that's it? Because, you know, as soon as you start counting up the factions with inside 40k, you know that's going to be more than 2 years. So they're going to have to do some major releases to do this turnaround, maybe. Donny Wood says, I think it's fine having all of these small factions, but they are taking so long to get the battle tomes out. Well, there you go. There you go. You're right. But sales of some of the new factions and some of the new models are definitely related to, if you like, the absence of battle tomes for some of the older factions. So you want to pick up a new army because it's available and it's fun to play and it's got lots of cool new rules, or do you want to play that army that's just got the index rules? I can't remember the name of what the index equivalent was for Age of Sigmar. You know what decision you're going to make. And I'm not saying that's intentional, but, you know, Games Workshop is in a business, aren't they? They run a business, so it's reasonable for them to promote the sale and of new models, because we want them to succeed, and we have to understand that. Okay. Scott says, that was from Dunny Woods, by the way, that previous comment. Scott says the codec needs to be written with the army in mind. In developing the army, there can always be different without duplication. Not all armies should have the same abilities. Agreed. My point was, to a degree, is there's only a finite set of manipulations, if you like, to that rule system. So the problem is you start to see duplication, don't you? And that's the issue, from my point of view, I suppose. Ashicus, the Muse, good name. There's nothing wrong with Muse and musing and being a muse. And I like Ashicus as well. It's kind of like Atticus, but Ashicus. I like that. The thing I find funny is the fact that Swifthawk Agents ended up technically having 3 allegiances. Swifthawk Agents, Tempest Eye, and Order. Yeah, well, I mean, certainly as far as Order, that's the Grand Allegiance. It makes sense in terms of... I don't mind the Grand Allegiances. I like the idea that certain factions belong to a Grand Allegiance. And, you know, it's like the old D&D days of chaotic good, chaotic evil, chaotic neutral, etc., etc. I don't want to go to that level of sub-faction, but, you know, I kind of like the idea. I like the idea that the Daughters of Cain are indeed an order faction, because despite the fact that they are murderous and insane, they have a societal structure. They like order in the world, even if it's murderous order. So it does make sense. It makes sense, and you would see that those wonderful semi-snakes would more willingly ally themselves with an order faction than they would, say, with someone from Chaos or Destruction, who they just simply would not, they despise the wanton destruction that comes with those force of nature armies. Whew. And they're certainly not dead. So where'd you go with that? They could have released, of course, another Grand Allegiance, but that would have taken a whole bunch of work into the system, wouldn't it? Right, Dunny Woods. By the time they all get their Sigmar battle tomes out, things like Seraphon will be outdated. They already feel a bit like that now. Well, that's the other issue, isn't it? That's that cycle of renewal. The more factions there are, the greater that cycle of renewal gets extended. Unless they're willing to do multiple factions at a multiple point, and that's the issue, isn't it? So I have to say, you see the Caradron Overlords being released, and by the way, I absolutely love the Caradron Overlords, because certainly from a modelling perspective, I love the models. And you know what? There was something unique about the Caradron Overlords. They had transport capacity. They had vehicles. Genius. Brilliant. They changed the meta of the game, if you like, and introduced a completely unique way of deploying your models. You no longer just deep strike anyway. You've got to actually drive your vehicle over there and then essentially provide a similar mechanic to deep strike. And importantly, if you're let's make a comparison for other deep striking units. Those units aren't at risk if you take them off the table. If I take my tree revenants, for instance, and put them in the wibbly tangled root web, or whatever it's called, the webway, the root way, they're not at risk. They're not at risk until I deploy them. But with the Caradron Overlords, they're afforded a degree of protection from the vehicle, but they're also at risk from being within the vehicle. I like that. That introduced a really interesting dynamic to the game. Have they managed to keep that up with every single faction we've seen? Did we see that with Fire Slayers? Did we see something unique in Fire Slayers? We saw the Feel No Pain of Nurgle. The ability to teleport around the table isn't desperately new, is it? There's plenty of units that can pop up 9 inches away from enemies. So no, maybe we didn't see that much that new. They can throw their shields as they charge into combat. They've got a shooting attack that's less than their deployment range, so I can throw my axes 8 inches, but for the vast majority of the time, if I'm doing the pop-up, I deploy 9 inches away. They're terribly slow, so the idea of advancing into that's certainly, they play differently to other armies. The question is do they play different enough, and is that sustainable if you keep introducing many new factions? Oh, right. Ralph says, hope they will update the models of Seraphon to coincide with a new battle tome for them. Yeah. No, probably not going to happen. I'd like to see different Lizard Riders. I can't remember the name of them now. That, believe it or not, Rachel's Seraphon army was mine to start with, and I think there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that's beautiful. Really interesting models. The only thing I really had interest in is those super wide-hipped Lizard Riders. Let's just see something that's far more lizardy, far more aggressive. And I think, if I remember rightly, the Dark Elf faction had a bunch of Lizard Riders at one point, Cold One Riders, and the lizards in that are exactly as they should be, far more predatorial. Here we go. Coleman says GW might have pushed themselves up a dead end a bit though. Whatever the faction you're into, you'll still sort of expect some new stuff to be announced anyway. Well, yeah, there you go. And it is interesting when you see a codex come out that isn't accompanied by new models, then people are a little bit up in arms, aren't they? They want to see some love. Okay. Mr. Miniature says, from a numbers point of view, there are a lot of similarities between factions. The fluff and the differences in battalions, magic, etc., and the resulting synergies gives a lot of variety for narrative play. You're right. You know, like I say, this was. It's always good to muse, isn't it? And just because I put the subject up doesn't necessarily mean I've actually come down on one side of the fence or the other. I think it's a worthwhile debate, though, isn't it? And you've made a solid point there, Mr. Miniature, which is, whilst there is a finite amount of stats that you can manipulate, move, to hit, to wound, weapon skill, ballistic skill, etc., etc., which is essentially now equating to hit and to rune rolls, isn't it? They've made it so simplified that essentially that's what we're talking about. There are ways that they can introduce faction-specific stuff, so we can see from battalions particular spells that allow you to build synergies up. So even within a single faction, you can develop your own style of play that you favour, I suppose. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough to say, actually, give me more, give me more, give me more, and I'll find my way through what makes my play style right. And I suppose that led, you know, again, back to the initial question. Can you ever have too much, if you like? You know, is it great that all of that is available to me, or does that mean if essentially I've got so many options available to me in each faction, I'm going to bend that faction to play to my favourite playstyle rather than actually adopt my playstyle to the limitations of the army? I don't know. I think, Mr. Miniature, you are probably closer to the truth than I am in that chain of thought there, so thanks for that. Ralph says, so back to topic, the question I ask myself is, what other fantasy factions could there be? Well, what other could indeed? One of the things that prompted this is the fun about the fishmen. I don't think the fishmen are fishmen. I think the fishmen are probably seagulls, maybe, but who knows? Maybe they are fishmen. Maybe if somebody's seen something that I haven't seen, because you have to excuse me, I've actually, unfortunately, not had much chance to catch up on some of the community stuff. I was in London today, didn't get back till late, and I just haven't had a chance to catch up. So I'm assuming the fishmen are still exactly that. A little bit of trolling from GW to keep us guessing. Strangely enough, I talked in one of my Monday musings a while ago about the idea that there was a lot of Age of Sigmar stuff was related towards the elements. So the Caradron Overlords from the air, etc., etc., fire, air, you know, and I sort of said there's two kind of things missing really, which is water and earth. And we hadn't yet seen anything that was kind of like earthy, I suppose, to a degree. I mean, I think chaos sits outside of all of those things, of course, because they're beautifully chaotic, and so they should do. But I did say, you know, are we going to see a faction that's about the sea, that is about water? And here we are amongst the crazy rambles that is fishmen. We shall see. We shall see. We know they exist as a keyword. We know they've got some mention. We know they were created by the Elven pantheon of gods. And we know that it was an initial trial which didn't work out too well. So they were hushed off to whatever corner of the fantasy realms that they were going to before their particular Eldar god decided to have another stab at something. One can only assume so. We also know they don't stick too much of a chance against our wonderful Daughters of Cain. Right. Ashikas the Muse, I find it absolutely hilarious that you guys are complaining about the fact that it takes forever for battle tomes to come out. As a Warhammer Fantasy veteran, we literally had to wait almost a decade. Well, there you go. Yeah, I'm not complaining as such. I'm saying let's be conscious of it. You know, every time you introduce a new faction, that's one more month away from renewal. But you're right. You know, I'm with you. I play Eldar, and there's a bunch of stuff in my army as far as models are concerned that go back to when I was pretty much still at university. So there you go. But you're right. Yes, let's not get too grumpy, and let's not be spoilt. They are working, and I did say this at the start. They're working incredibly hard, and we are seeing a greater pace of releases than we've ever seen before. So be grateful for that, and it's good to have that reminder. Thank you very much. Where are we now? Rowlet says, Rowlet 431 says, hey, and in which case, hey, back at you. We could do with some more human factions, says Coleman. I think so. I think we will see them. You know, what we're definitely seeing is a stabilization, if you like, or an advancement of Age of Sigmar's storyline. So we're seeing settlements. We're seeing settlements that have been around long enough to be attacked and then undermined and removed again. So, you know, let's see some of those human factions. It would be good to see, and it'd be great to see some new models, because if anything like the I can't remember the name of them, but the acolytes for Zeech that belong to kind of an extension of the Zangor list and stuff like that, and what we've seen from the Chaos side of it, wouldn't it be great to see some freshly sculpted humans into that as well? Some really cool human factions, some hardy warriors that are less barbaric and more civilized. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see something that comes into it from an ordered society in a grand city. That has that kind of Astra Militarum aspect, if you like, to Age of Sigmar. Something that has great synergies around discipline, and almost back to close ranks. I'm not suggesting you do that, but, you know, certainly benefits from multiple elements of a unit, or multiple units supporting each other, or something super cool like that. Right. Alastair Ide says, but did people give up armies because of a lack of support? People definitely are, aren't they? People are abandoning their armies that have had less support, I suppose. They certainly, and this was back to my point about the commercial reality of this. Armies certainly get shelved for a while, shall we say. And you do see when battle tomes and codexes start to come out, people are like, I think it's time to dust down X army. And like I say, that's no bad thing from a commercial point of view, is it, of GW. Okay, Scott says, I guess you really have only two types of army, shooty or fighty. And I'm paraphrasing there. Now the distinction between how the shooty army functions is where the flavour comes into play. Yeah, true. That's certainly been breaking it down to its, you know, I think you've had some more. I think there was Magic-y. You know, and stoicism as well, to a degree. The Fire Slayers have that. They're you know, they're not particularly magic-y. They're quite fighty. They're a little bit shooty, but they are quite stoic against magic. So there you go. Right, I'm not giving up on my dwarves. This is Coleman. I'm not giving up on my dwarves. Whatever happens, don't do that, Coleman. Don't give up on your dwarves, and you have no intention to. Dwarves are by far the beardy best. Alistair says, even though it's dwarvish rather than dwarfish, Barak Karaz al menu. I have no idea what any of that means, but well, the dwarves are kind of earthly. Yeah, good point. Not the KO or Fire Slayers, but the classic version. Good point. Let's see them again. Dunny Wood says, I think they are the rumoured Cthulhu Dark Elves, considering they can ally Daughters of Cain. I doubt they are High Elves. Well, I hope so. I hope we will see these Cthulhu Dark Elves. I know that Sam is looking forward to it, looking forward to the Dark Elves release. So it will be good. It will be good. Surreal says, I have spent the stream cleaning and priming a pylon. I can only assume that is a Necron pylon. Is that correct? In which case, that is an awesome model. Awesome model. At one point, I need to help my brother build his. But they look so cool. They look really, really cool. Daryl, there was a leak of a bit of fluff about a group going to help Alariel during the War of Life, and they were ambushed by a new sea-based faction. Yes, they are called the Idenf Deepkin. Exactly. I think they're going to be LV. They're not going to be fish people. They're going to be CLV. Not. Who knows? Are they going to be wet? Are they going to be dry? And Scott says, had a thought that the Sea Elves could be fishmen. There's no saying that GW isn't changing their backstory. Well, exactly that. We're seeing with the elf spirits, there's this bit of fluff, isn't there, that's released about the elven god pantheons, essentially taking the elven spirits but creating something new. Precedence was definitely set with Alariel forming all of her elven spirits into tree creatures, into the dryads and all the rest. So, you know, who's to assume that now we've seen Daughters of Cain, which are part elf, part snake, part batwingy thing, that we won't see more of these hybridization. Are we going to see mermen? You know, is that really what we're talking about when we're talking about fish people? Are we going to see half elf, half fish of some description? You know, certainly popular as far as you know, Marvel is concerned, isn't it? Johnny Rockstar. Hey Johnny, how you doing? Good to hear from you. I would give you my thoughts on Sigmar, but it would be a book's worth of ranting, so I best not. TLDR, it's a shambles. I don't know what TLDR stands for. But don't worry about it. I'm reading from this, Johnny Rockstar. You are unhappy with Sigmar, so feel free to feel that way. I think that's the important thing. Not everybody is happy with what's been done with Sigmar. Neil Malden says, like the Tau? Semi-fish. So who is the deaf Age of Sigmar player at Wargamer Online? Steve has been on, I think, multiple battle reports and a little bit of Jack. Steve has pretty much, I think, every deaf faction, so you will have seen a few battle reports with that. And of course Jack, my son, has the Flesh Eater Court, which was the last battle report that was on premium that went up at the weekend. So yeah, that was a good battle. That was good fun. Patrick says that will be Steve. Frank Storm says hello. Slippy Tiger says, Ocean Man, take B by the hand and take me to the land. Nice and poetic. Octo Elf says, Donny Woods, good suggestion there for a faction. Too long, didn't read, short version. There you go. Okay, thank you. Thank you for everybody who's telling me what too long didn't read means. I'm not a young man. There are only so many acronyms I can keep up with. My job is full of acronyms. I do my best to keep up with those. But, you know, thank you very much for teaching me the too long didn't read stuff. Scott says, elf upper body, octopus lower body. Well, it would be interesting, wouldn't it? Especially if they made a whoop 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 noise. Although he's not really an octopus, is he? So there you go. Let's look at it from a different perspective, though. From a hobbyist perspective, can we have too many factions? Do we, you know, if it's not so much about the game, if we're not concerned about the game, and I think the general consensus has been, I think, in the chat that nobody's saying, yep, this is too much, too far. Everybody, the majority, I think, is saying there's room to maneuver within the rule system. There are always inventive ways of applying that. So I think that's the general consensus, if you like, from what we've seen. From a model point of view, maybe that would be more universal. Are any of us concerned about too many models, other than the impact that we have and the groans I hear from the community when an amazing new model comes out and everybody goes, no, that means no takeaway this week, or the next week, or the week after, and no food, in fact, because I am going to go out and buy that giant Daughter of Cain model. So what have we got here? Oh, the chat's gone off one. Cutting down trees with a herringbone saw, maybe. Is that a thing? I'm sure it is. A little off topic, but has there been any rumour on when the Orc Codex is being released? Well, given the next three Xenos Codex do not include Orc, so that takes us from February, March, April. I'm assuming one a month. We might see them closer, we might not, but let's face it, we probably are. Then we will go, I would hazard a guess, into a leading into the summer. We'll probably see Imperial factions. We'll see an expansion of knights, possibly one more plastic model that we haven't seen yet. Maybe we're certainly going to see an expansion of knights as a faction one way or another. I think that's going to run us into late summer, so I would suggest you're looking at the second half of the year before you start to see what have we got left. We've got orcs, we've got orcs, Gene Stealer Cult, Harlequins. Am I missing anything? I'm thinking Xenos. Necrons will have been done. Tau will have been done. Dark Eldar will have been done. So yes, I'd say second half of the year, mate, is what I would be looking at for orcs, which is shocking and unfair because orcs are awesome. And as soon as that codex comes out, I might have to consider hitting a whole bunch of stuff with green paint. Lobster elves, why not? Why not? Scott says never. Unfortunately, due to the delay in chat, I'm not quite sure what you're saying never to. Alistair there says it's old man with us. Eduardo says, although people are inclined to think that the new Sea Elves will belong to Tarion and Teclis faction, I'm of the opinion they will belong to Malarians. I'm with you. I'm with you. I think maybe. Oh, wait, hold on though. Didn't it actually say it was one of those two, Tyrion and Teclis, that created a faction and was unhappy with it and sent them away? Did Malarian take them then and use them to his own ends? Maybe, who knows? Daryl says, as long as the models, some of the rules, synergies and fluff are all interesting, I'm happy. Well, that's the thing. Keep them coming as long as you can keep it interesting. The question is as plastic addicts that we are we discerning enough to differentiate when this is still interesting, or are we our eyes are far too glazed over by the beauty of the new raw plastic on sprue? Ashicus the Muse says, can we please see some more Age of Sigmar battle reports soon? Yes, indeed you can. I think the next live battle report, which will be next Wednesday, not this coming Wednesday, but the one after, although I'm tempted to squeeze one in at some point soon, because certainly for a short while I'm trying to catch up on my tournament army, those live battle reports are fun to do. I've made a whole bunch of improvements to the live battle reports, and maybe that's a good place to, besides a quick look at the community, maybe if while I've got your attention, if I could have some feedback on the live battle report. I've already seen a lot of it, but if there's anything you want to add to it or put your 10 penneth in, then please do so. But yes, you will indeed see more battle reports in Age of Sigmar and 40k, but I think the next live one we will do will be Age of Sigmar. We've had pretty positive feedback of the first one we did. I think I was a little bit over focused on getting the technology working than I was on giving the two players time to actually prep, and I changed last minute on them whether they were playing 40k or Age of Sigmar, and I went, look, we've done a couple of Age of Sigmar bat reps recently, let's do a 40k one, and they both like, okay. And I should have read that hesitancy as, hold on a minute, I haven't played 40k in a few weeks, and I'm going to be rusty as hell. But so we'll dip back into Age of Sigmar for now, and we'll see some stuff. I need to find 2 willing and able players, but we're going to give it another go. And I've worked on quite a few improvements in terms of audio and in terms of feedback on screen of what's happening during the game. So let's have a look at what else is in the chat. Neil says, as long as I get my Bloodthirster sized Orc War boss, I don't care. I'm with you. I'm not sure Bloodthirster size is enough. Certainly just something badass. Yeah, let's just see something like that. Edouard, it says Characters Corsairs messed up elves mentioned in the Day OK Battle Tome as having created by Malarian. There you go. So they've been created by him. I got it wrong. So thank you very much for the correction. Space Wolves, says Frost and Fist. You will see your Space Wolves. You will probably see your Space Wolves in the next release, I should imagine. Johnny Rockstar apologising for the rant. Just slipped out. Yeah, that's fine. It was controlled and it was polite, and you're entitled to your opinion, sir. So that's cool. As long as we don't get any crazy raging going off in the chat, it's okay. This is not Fort Police time. We're allowed to have opinions. G3XE, good name, all rhymes. I like it. Just brought some Zangors for both 40k and Age of Sigmar. But I bought the AOS ones because they look so much cooler than the 40k ones. Am I alone in this? I doubt you are alone in this. They look amazing. Do the models gain anything by holding chainsaws? I'm not sure. So I'm with you. Well, go with what you've got. But, Ashigas, I feel like instead of there being too many, I feel like they're trying to consolidate the factions. Right now, it feels like they're still trying to introduce us to the races. I mean, agreed, that's the thing. There's so much they need to do and so much they've got to do. And yeah. I do know that when you've got one of those older factions, one of those older races, and all the time you're seeing shiny new models and you're waiting for your army to get a bit of love, it can be frustrating. But we also have to remember this has probably been one of the fastest release cycles GW has ever done, so be grateful as well for that. No, Frost and Fist, not Space Wolves. No, down, Methos, down, says Nurgling. Plus, Eduardo says, plus they'll match well with Cold War Riders and Chariots. Yep, true. Scott says, I'd like to see GW expand groups like the Kroot, making them true mercenary force as they were originally written. Wouldn't that be fun? Some little sub-faction stuff. I'd love the fact of a mercenary force that you can just bring into almost any 40k faction. They will ally at a price with a bunch of special rules, which means if things don't go too great, excuse me, long day, there's a good chance they'll run away. I had to be up ridiculously early this morning, and that was compounded by the fact that I made a wee mistake with what time I needed to be at a remote location versus what time I needed to set my alarm, which means I arrived more than an hour ahead of what I needed to do, and it was long before the sun came up. But there you go, that's what you get for not concentrating when you set your alarm as you go to bed. Scott says the thing I've just read, and Marlborough69 says Luke to use command points. Luke to use the command points. Is that Liam? I think you mean Liam to use his command points. Would be good, wouldn't it? You have to remember that what's going off camera is me passing them notes saying, can you make sure you name your units as you move them around and all those kind of things. So it really was quite distracting for them. And in hindsight, everybody was quite tired that night as well. And I was like, yeah, but I want to go. I want to try this tech out, so we'll give it a go. But I can appreciate that the game is frustration. Maybe should have spent more time at the beginning explaining that it's not really about the bat report. This is about trying to see if it works. But I get that. People still want entertainment at the end of the day. Dunny Woods, I would love a Kroot army. Only race I can get behind in 40k. Yeah, let's see that range expanded. I'm with you. Calidor.org says, I fear for the Tyrion and Teclis release. If they build it around kits that are quite new from the High Elf range, they should do a cut and design something new from scratch. Yes, I agree. There's been some beautiful models for Silver Tower and all the rest. Yeah, Patrick would be the one to ask if whether there's anything inside the range that is worth salvaging, because he is a true deep lover of everything high and elvish. I do know he wants great looking dragons, and if he doesn't get his great looking dragons, there is going to be trouble. Alistair, sorry, apart from the rigid castle system and breeding programs, cast system. So this is about Tau. Okay, we're into Tau. No worries, that's cool. Well, where are we? We're at 5 to 10. Fair point, Mentlium. He did like 1 damage twice with a Redemptor Dreadnought in melee. It just makes me sad. I know. He's learnt a lot. We were talking afterwards, and he was just like, "Oh man, I think his dice. It was one of those things, you know, when everything goes against you, your brain stops functioning, and I think that definitely happened to Liam during that game. He was just like, oh no, it can't get any worse. It's got worse. It's got worse. It's got worse. So I'm just switching off and waiting for the last turn. When is Phil gonna call it a day? Anyway, yes. So besides that, what else is going off? Well, let's have a quick look at the community. There's some fun stuff on the community. Let's have a quick chat about that before we move on. Well, I hope we've looked at it a little bit from the perspective of the models and the fun of the models and those kind of things. We talked very briefly about that because I think I should imagine there's kind of a universal agreement on that. That, you know, we all love to see new models hit the table, and I think, you know, amongst the chat, the wonderful, venerable gamers that have joined me tonight, we've seen the way that GW need to focus. They need to focus on those faction rules that create some uniqueness to the gameplay, really. For us to feel like we're playing something different rather than simply switching the counters out of an army that seems overly familiar. I think that's the thing. Okay. So, yeah, maybe that's the thing. That's the thing we'll email off to Games Workshop saying, "Dear Games Workshop, please remember to keep these things beautifully unique. But other than that, carry on doing exactly what you're doing because it's awesome." Right, apologies for that. Where are we now? A couple of things that's going up on the campaign that I thought was interesting. They're lucky the GW are recruiting for part works. That's interesting stuff. So they want to bring Tunnel into these sorts of part work releases. This, to me, absolutely caught my eye. This is the Forge World preview of Hives of Necromunda, so it's saying you may have conquered the Underhive, but there's so much more. The Palatine Hive is just the beginning. In the future, you'll be able to travel to other hives, each replete with their own set of dangers, from the silent, corpse-choked waste grounds of High Mortis, to the Gene Stealer-infested ruins of Hive Secundus, to the even Gothrul's Needle, a rare democratic city-state in the nightmarish future of the 41st millennium. I love this. I love this illustration. It's fantastic. And I immediately want to build it, other than the scale of it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. You could probably fit about 100 people in that. But maybe that's all that is in there. Either way, I mean, there's probably a lot more in this. And maybe the scale of these things are absolutely ginormous and I'm just misunderstanding. Maybe that's where you park spaceships. So maybe the size of this thing is utterly ridiculous. Of course it is. What am I talking about? Of course that's ginormously big. Because everything's ginormously big in 40k. Either way, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I want to build it. And now I've realised the scale of it. Building it might be somewhat problematic. But how cool is that? Couple of other things going off. We've got Dread Solace beginning, the global campaign. Lots of nice stuff coming out. Little new tricks, old units, part 6. Shadow and Ruin. So what? Thrones of Skulls. This was interesting. I went and ordered myself one of these little things because I couldn't resist it. So yeah, there he is. Really impressed with the model. Really like it. And I couldn't resist. I had to order myself one. I've just finished Xenos actually, and I'm moving on to the second book, which I've completely forgotten the name of. So there you go. Interesting stuff taking place in the community. Seen some great stuff on the forum. Derpimus Maximus commenting here, I think, on Reaper's clan. Some cool stuff happening in the forum. Some beautiful stuff being uploaded as well. So don't forget to check out the forum if you're that way inclined. We're seeing some brilliant hobby blogs building up on this as well, but great stuff going off. So check out who now there's an orc who loves, I don't know whether I can read that, but it looks kind of fun. Who loves his job. There you go, I can read it. Perfectly reasonable, and it does look like somebody's getting a proper beating there, doesn't it, by that wonderful orc. So there you go. Check out the community. There's been some fun stuff going off there, definitely. You can also see the live back report in there and some of the previous shows, and that is indeed the Flesh Eater Corpse versus Sylvaness battle report I was talking about, which is on premium. So don't forget to check that out. What else have we got? What else have we got? Let's catch up on the remaining of the chat, and then I'm going to say goodnight, because I have been up more hours than most people should be up. Okay, fair point. I meant Liam. Got that one. More crush for the High Elves. Plug the forum, maybe, says Ralph. Well, I think I've just done that. Don't forget to go along to the forum. Hell, if you're going along to the forum, why not go along, and if you're not already, register to become a premium member, because you get access to all of the super cool premium content as well. And more importantly than just having access to the content, you get to support us. And what's more nourishing than the warm fuzzy feeling inside that you're helping us do more and more every week. There you go. Oh dear me, Space Communist, glad to be a comment about that at some point. Liam calls Sam. Right, Ralph says, after the show, check out the current Kitetsu video about the Sea Elves. Well, I will do Kitetsu. I've not caught up on Kitetsu's content, so I will do great stuff, and you can also catch up on a bunch of Kitetsu stuff inside the WGO hub as well, which I think I was just trying to show you there. So can I do that? There you go, look. So check out the hub, look, a little section there, and there is indeed Kitetsu. So pop along and check out what's going off there. Right, I think at that we've had our dosage of Monday Musing. I have more little fluffy pink dwarves to paint tonight. I'm going to get my mid-coats on before I call it a night. Hopefully I can get that done in, say, about an hour. I'm going to catch up with a few people on the chat as well, see what's going off out there, and yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Are you going to hear from me again before the weekend? Probably not before the weekend. I think Sam will be doing the show on Saturday. There's a potential that we might do another live bat rep. Our intention is to do those every 2 weeks. The reason I'm saying there's a potential for it to be one sooner rather than later is I want to experiment with the format a little bit. And the easiest way to do that is to try it new, see what the community has to say, and we evolve from those feedback. But needless to say, I've done a whole bunch of work into getting the microphone over the table better, and I've improved the audio of the microphone over the table by a good 10 yards. I have improved the on-screen graphics for us to keep update to where the game is going. I think overall I'd probably do less switching between the live game and the desk, for want of a better word, but if I do switch, I will switch mics out consistently. I've managed to work that out. So yeah, lots to do. I'd like to try the format and get more feedback to see if it's working. But amongst all of that, I also need to film a battle report for premium as well. So we shall see. We shall see. And paint a million orange-haired dwarves. Lots of people saying goodnight to me. Thank you very much for joining me on a Monday. It's always good to kick the week off of hobbying. If you're around, if you're doing hobby, bang as an image up on the forum or put something up on Wargamer Online Community. So if I bring that up, as you can see, we've got Amit messaging me. So Revolderman's posting a bunch of stuff up there. What else have we got going off? Whoa. Actually, I'm not on the Wargamer Online community page, so that doesn't work, does it? How could I make such an error? But there you go. Let's go to the Wargamer Online community. There you go. And as you can see, there's a bunch of cool stuff going off. It's a poll with my name on it, which I definitely can't remember the listing. So go along and try that poll out, because I don't think I put that on. James has spent 2.5 hours speeding through this for a game on Friday. That's ridiculous. That's not fair. How can you do that in 2.5 years? You crazy kid. That's amazing. That's beautiful. John Smith, Monday Musing Project. Well, there you go. There is indeed. I'm meant to be going, but we've got to check that out, haven't we? Wowza. There's a little bit of work there, isn't there? Do it. Get it done. Joe as well, Joe Joda, is working on these cool little things. We've got some Batman models. They're great models, aren't they? They're really cool. And there was a wonderful debate from Nick Green over how much highlights is too much highlights, and then the debate of whether, you know what, as Scott points out, whatever you like, mate. That's the main thing. I know you're asking for opinions, and I think ultimately, though, judge your work by your, on your own merits, I suppose. I suggested a bit of blending, but, that's just me. I know you want to keep it bright and sharp, so you go that way. Neil, long live the Emperor, and I'm sure he's talking about a different Emperor there, Napoleonic maybe, but that's cool. It's nice to see some alternate Emperors on there. And Bill Bentley is both back into Lord of the Rings and into his Germans, getting those done as well. Steve Beckett's working on his Crimson Fist. Look, you pop along to the community, check out some of this wonderful stuff. I can see that Nagash model that was mentioned in the chat. Do all of those things. And get some hobby done this week, and I will see you again next week. Good night, all. Thank you very much for joining me, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.